I, Denise Park, do hereby give notice that a meeting of the Blackburn with Darwen Borough Council Forum will be held at Blackburn Town Hall on Thursday, 30th of January 2025 at 6 p.m. And if I could ask you to please remain standing whilst the Mayor's Chaplain says prayers.
Worshipful Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Chief Executive, Councillors, friends and colleagues, I greet you with the greetings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace and blessings to you all. I will start the meeting, inshallah, by reciting the first surah of the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, followed by a brief translation and some virtues of the surah itself. And then, inshallah, you can carry on with your meeting. Bear with me. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. All praises to the Almighty Allah, Lord of the worlds, the most compassionate, the most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek for help and guidance. Guide us along the straight path, the path of those you have blessed, and not those you are displeased with, or those who are astray. The Prophet ﷺ said, Surah Fatiha is one of the greatest surahs in the Quran. It is a dua for guidance, read in every single salah, 5 times a day, and in every single unit of salah. Salah is not valid without reciting this surah. And it's a protection against evil and misguidance. May the Almighty Allah grant you all the ability to make decisions which are just, fair, and fruitful for all members and sections of the community. Ameen. I leave you with peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can I welcome you all?
Councillor Salim Siddharth and Rana Khan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item of business is to receive and confirm the minutes of the Policy Council meeting from the 5th of December 2024. Now, Mr Mayor, we will receive any declarations of interest. If any members do have declarations of interest, they should complete the form. Yep. Okay, thank you. If there are any other declarations, please complete the form and leave it with Nafisha. Thank you. And then the next item of business is your mayoral communications.
Thank you. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, the Mayoresses and I have had a very busy 10 weeks since the last meeting in December. We have been meeting diverse communities of Blackburn with Darwen. Then we have attended numerous carol concerts and Christmas celebrations at Blackburn Cathedral, schools across the borough of Blackburn with Darwen, and we attended pantomimes at King George's and Empire Theatre at Ewood. Oh yes, I did. January has been a busy month. We have attended judicial valedictory of Judge Booth, a video call with the Mayor of Perron, visit to Westholme School to meet with the principal, Mr Paul Taylor, and had a tour of the school, attended lunch at Blackburn with Darwen Youth Zone, Street Zone, the Street Zone Buzzing Darwen. I attended the King's Award for Voluntary Service with the Lord Lieutenant of Lancashire, and Blackburn with Darwen had a winner, St George's Millhill Scout Group. I and the Mayoresses attended Lancashire County Royal British Legion Annual Conference, which this year was held at Derwent Hall in Darwen. On Monday of this week, we attended Holocaust Memorial Day service at Blackburn Cathedral. And can I thank everyone who attended, and the Interfaith Quorum, council officers and Blackburn Cathedral for their work they did in arranging that event. The Mayor's Ball this year is on Friday the 4th of April. It is a new venue for the Mayor's Ball. We are holding it in Blackburn Cathedral, in the main part of the cathedral. Tickets priced only £50 per person. A great night of food and entertainment, and all money raised goes to the Mayor's charities. Finally, I've only got 3.5 months left in office, so if you would like me to attend any events, get in touch with Andrew Thompson in the Mayor's office. We need at least 3 weeks' notice. Thank you.
I can advise that no questions have been received from the public under Procedure Rule 10, but we have had 2 notices of motion which have been received under Procedure Rule 12. The first one of those, they're both set out on the guidance note in the agenda papers. The first one is the hospital shuttle bus cancellation, which is to be moved by Councillor Phil Riley and seconded by Councillor John Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone will be aware of the background to this motion. And it's fair to say as well that I think the world has moved on. I think I've noticed today, I think that there is an attempt going to be made by one of the bus providers to produce, bus operators to introduce a paid service. Now, whether that will be what people want or not is another thing. But the background to this is that obviously East Lancashire Health Trust have got an enormous deficit, and they're expected to make about £26 million worth of savings in the next couple of months, and they began with the shuttle bus. I don't think any of us in this room feel it will be helpful to say that they were wrong to. I mean, they've got to make some savings, you know, and I think we all understand that. The 26 million that they are being asked to make is a pinprick compared to the overall NHS. So I think the principle of what they're trying to do, I think everybody understands that. What this motion, I think, recognises is that the way it's being done has been poor. And in particular, you know, we, as it says, we could have helped. We want to help. We are in this new place-based world. We are there's one of their main stakeholders. So I think there is the concern really was that this went ahead, it was suddenly announced, we were given no more notice than everybody else was, and not entirely surprisingly, it got the response that it has got. So that's really the story. The final paragraph, I think, is obviously also important, which is that they are likely to have to make, I don't think it's a secret to say that they're likely to have to make more savings, and what I think we are asking for in this is for this council and this local authority to be involved from as soon as we can be, so that A, we can give, I guess, bits of advice, but B, that we also understand where these kind of stories are heading, so that we can take sort of, if necessary, appropriate action. So I think that those are the points, Mr. Mayor, that I wanted to make. I'm happy to move the motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I do second this motion. I echo the leader's comments. We do think, and that's across the piece here, we're all the same thing, that it was ill thought out, ill prepared and ill done to catch the council and the councillors on hop like this, not to be able to give us a chance to look at it, maybe, like Councillor Riley said, give them some help, talk with other councils, Burnley Council and County, to see what they could do. Instead, they've just gone ahead and done this. And what bothers us in this room is that if we don't do something now and say something and put to the point that we're a stakeholder here, a big stakeholder in East Lancashire, but also the hospital is in Blackburn, that they should communicate better with us, and that we should have a channel of communication either through the leader or through the chief executive, where these things can be discussed. Maybe a scrutiny group could have helped, anything like that could have helped, rather than just not tell anybody and just do it. So I think the motion itself, I think everybody's going to support this. I wouldn't imagine that anyone has any reason not to. But I would hope that this will send a message to the trust that they don't treat stakeholders like this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mustafa Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree with what my esteemed colleagues have said. I think we all acknowledge that the hospital's trust is in a financial under severe financial pressure, but things could have been handled differently to and sort of sought the assurance of not only the people of the borough but also staff. I think staff use these services as well. I don't think it's been handled in a way that's conducive to providing that assurance. So I'm wholeheartedly happy with the motion and will support it. Thank you.
Want to speak?
I'm perfectly happy with what's been said by my colleagues.
Therefore, we'll move straight to a vote. It's a button vote. So please vote now.
So the second motion is regarding child sexual exploitation. Again, it's set out in your papers and it's to be moved by Councillor Kevin Connor and seconded by Councillor Paul Marrow.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, this is the motion on the child sexual exploitation. This council views some of the national debate around child sexual grooming, like exploitation gangs, to be diverting attention away from the appalling nature of the crimes committed and the trauma experienced by the victims. Deplorable personal attacks have served no purpose and exasperated those campaigning to provide a voice for survivors seeking justice. We share the concerns of Oldham councillors as expressed in their motion, which the council passed unanimously on July 7th, 2024. The motion identified councillors' misgivings about the 2022 Greater Manchester Independent Assurance Review and in essence called for a Home Office-led public inquiry into child sexual abuse in the borough. Or to commission an independent inquiry should the Home Office refuse the request. The response from the Home Office was that it was down to the Council to commission such an inquiry. Not only did this response not fully address the local dissatisfaction, but was seemingly oblivious to the fact that there has been numerous investigations into the systematic rape of young women by organised gangs, including in Rotherham, Cornwall, Derbyshire, Rochdale and Bristol. An inquiry into abuse in Rotherham found 1,400 children have been sexually abused over the period 1997 to 2014. An investigation in Telford found that up to 1,000 girls had been abused over 40 years. Local authorities do not have the depth of resource required to either commission or carry out an inquiry of a scale that conceivably could also transcend neighbouring authorities. The Grooming Task Force, established in 2023, in its first 12 months, helped arrest over 550 suspects, identified and protected over 4,000 victims, which suggests these crimes are still being perpetrated. Judged by the number of child protection campaigners calling for a national inquiry, the 2015 reconstitution of the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, chaired by Baroness Jay, could be viewed as very broad-ranging and not just looking at the specific issue of grooming gangs. It was about the whole sexual abuse of children in all sorts of different settings. However, considering this inquiry has provided a wealth of evidence and recommendations, any new inquiry should not take a great deal of length of time to report and could be more focused in its aims. On Wednesday, January 8th, Sir Keir Starmer suggested the door was open to a U-turn on a national inquiry. Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, Jess Phillips MP, told Sky's political editor that nothing is off the table. On January 8th, and the victims come forward to me in the victims panel, which was recently announced by the government, said, actually we think there needs to be a national inquiry. I'll listen to them. On the 16th of January, the Home Secretary announced a rapid national audit into the scale and nature of grooming gangs across the country, and at the same time pledged 5 new local inquiries. Considering the above and increasing public opinion, there is sufficient reason for this Council to ask that the Chief Executive write to the Home Secretary to state that we view the announcement by the Home Secretary on the 16th of January to be insufficient and consider only that an immediate full national statutory inquiry with powers to compel witnesses to give evidence will suffice. There is a need to achieve the truth and give victims some long-awaited justice. In that regard, local inquiries have singly not worked. The spread of despicable grooming gangs is a national scandal which needs to be tackled nationally. Welcome the fact that the 20 recommendations of the 2015 independent inquiry into the child sexual abuse are to be implemented, and hope that it will be viewed that the best method to evaluate their effectiveness will be through the implementation of a national statutory inquiry. Request that the Grooming Gangs Task Force continue to be fully resourced and open to all police forces in England and Wales. Further, that where a local authority or a police and crime commissioner has serious issues with an historic investigation and request a review, such as the case with Oldham, that it is the task force that is charged to lead the review if granted. We further request that when perpetrators of these horrific crimes are identified, all are quickly brought before the courts, and that the Crown Prosecution Service act to ensure that justice for the victims is paramount. So that's the motion before you tonight. I have prepared a speech, right here, which I'm going to read out anyway, if only to embarrass you. In asking councillors to vote for this motion, can I strongly suggest that it should not be viewed as support for a right-wing bandwagon, as those campaigning for a statutory national inquiry have been accused of. As proof, 61 Labour councillors in Wigan, along with other parties, voted to pass a motion unanimously calling for a national inquiry. Sarah Champion, MP for Rotherham, who has been campaigning on child protection for over decades, backed the call for a national inquiry and has said nothing less than a full inquiry will restore faith in our safeguarding systems. The independent MP for Blackburn, Adnan Hussain, has backed calls for a national inquiry. We present this motion as a responsible, rational opposition, duty-bound to question government decisions that we feel are at odds to local opinion. To date, this national scandal has been inadequately addressed and should be immediately reviewed. Truth and justice for the victims should not be unduly delayed by local inquiries. This whack-a-mole approach to a national historic failure is demonstrably flawed, yet the Home Secretary remains committed. This despicable criminal activity has been happening on the watch of governments, both Conservative and Labour. Surely it is time to stop the finger-pointing and name-calling, prioritise victims' wishes and get on with an in-depth scrutiny of this horrific crime and bring forward robust solutions to eliminate it from our communities. If councillors remain unconvinced that only a statutory national inquiry will suffice, the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, which was announced for England and Wales by Theresa May in 2014, was originally intended to be a panel inquiry supported by experts in order to examine how the country's institutions handle their duty of care to protect children from sexual abuse. However, the inquiry was reconstituted in February 2015 as a statutory inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005 to give it greatly increased powers to compel, it's important, sworn testimony and to examine classified information which a local inquiry cannot do. To those councillors concerned about possible length of time for a national inquiry to report, it is addressed in the motion, and in the interim, greater use can be made of the expertise of the Grooming Gangs Task Force in investigating and the Criminal Prosecution Service seeking means to speed up bringing all perpetrators before the courts. I urge councillors to vote according to your conscience. Pass this motion unanimously and demonstrate this council's resolve without fear or favour to use all its powers to protect vulnerable children from from sexual abuse by grooming gangs and bring justice to their victims. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I reserve the right to speak later.
Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to second that motion and reserve the right to speak later.
Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to the motion. Councillors will be aware there are papers on your desk which have the amendment and show the amendments to the motion, and then a clean copy of the amendment so you can read it as is intended. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson. Sorry, Councillor Gunn, do you want to speak on that
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Connor for raising this motion on an important subject that ought to transcend politics. We agree that politicising this subject helps nobody, least of all the victims, who have had the strength to share their experiences. In Blackburn with Darwen, safeguarding children is a priority, and we will never be complacent. We have pioneered proactive partnership work and prioritised tackling child sexual exploitation to protect young people at risk of harm. For over 18 years, we have worked closely with our partners in the police to respond to concerns about safeguarding and abuse of any kind. Any child at risk of child sexual exploitation would be referred to the Engage team and supported by their own young persons worker. There are regular multi-agency child exploitation meetings and daily briefings, as well as informal information sharing made possible by co-location of the police and council workers. Our response is reviewed regularly in partnership with the police and health professionals. Tough action is taken to deal with offenders, and support is available for those who are vulnerable or have been affected. Local information demonstrates that we see individual adults of concern rather than gangs, and information sharing and monitoring of those individuals is carried out. Nationally, the Labour government will implement all of the recommendations of the Independent Inquiry of Child Sexual Abuse standalone report on grooming gangs from February 2022, including updates to the Department for Education's Child Sexual Exploitation Guidance, to ensure that it really does reflect the reality of this appalling crime. Government has already taken immediate action on 3 key recommendations from the reports and have committed to legislate to make it mandatory to report abuse, making it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. They've committed to legislate to make grooming an aggravating factor in the sentencing of child sexual offences to ensure the punishment fits the terrible crime, and have committed to overhaul the way information and evidence is gathered on child sexual abuse by introducing a single child identifier and through a strengthened police performance framework with new standards on public protection, child abuse and exploitation. Mr. Mayor, the amendments to the motion relate to Blackburn with Darwen, which is why I've given you that history of our experience here. But the imperative is to ensure that victims' experiences, which have fed into the National Inquiry of 2022, are not lost in the question of whether another inquiry should take place. The report was national, independent investigation that took place over 7 years at a cost of nearly £200 million, interviewed 725 witnesses, published 20 reports across 15 investigations, produced 24 research reports and processed 2 million pages of evidence. More than 7,000 victims took part. To ignore the findings of that research would be disrespectful, to say the least, and would be a failure to acknowledge the costs to survivors of reliving their abuse so that lessons may be learnt and future generations protected. We welcome the findings of the inquiry of the Commission will finally be implemented, and a rapid audit is taking place to share lessons. The focus on meeting the needs of survivors and victims of this horrendous crime has our full support.
So this council agrees, and the start of the motion is the same. We then talk about residents of our borough understanding the need for partnership working in terms of safeguarding. This council welcomes the holistic remit of the inquiry that was commissioned by the Conservative government, given the argument that children are by far most likely to suffer sexual abuse within the family. The next largest group of victims are online, and then in institutions such as schools, places of worship or sports clubs. The smallest group, which still consists of several thousand victims, will suffer street grooming. On the 16th of January, the Home Secretary announced a rapid national audit into the scale and nature of grooming gangs across the country, and at the same time pledged to 5 new local inquiries. Considering the above and increasing public opinion, there's sufficient reason for this council to ask that the Chief Executive write to the Home Secretary to state: Blackburn with Darwen Council views the announcement by the Home Secretary on the 16th of January as a positive commitment to address the 20 recommendations in the published report of October 2022, which the last Conservative government failed to do, according to the report's author, Baroness Jay, who describes the previous Conservative government's response as inconsequential, insubstantial and committed to nothing. Blackburn with Darwen acknowledges that there is a need to achieve truth and give victims some long-awaited justice. The recommendations of the 7-year inquiry have established how this might be achieved, so we request that the Home Secretary use every means possible to expedite the implementation of the 20 recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, so that there is no further delay in taking steps to reduce the number of victims of CSE and all forms of child sexual abuse. We request that the efficacy of the Grooming Gangs Task Force continue to be fully monitored and resourced as appropriate, and further request that when perpetrators of these horrific crimes are identified, all are quickly brought before the courts, and that the Crown Prosecution Service act to ensure that justice for the victims is paramount. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder to that amendment?
Can I second that, Mr Mayor, and reserve the right
Do you wish to speak now or reserve?
Reserve, please.
So, members, you'll now be debating the amendment to the motion, and at the conclusion of that debate, Councillor Connor will have the right to reply before we move to a vote on the amendment.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The amendment itself, I just want to ask a question on that. The relevancy to BWD alluded to in the amendment is paramount to provide assurance to the people of the borough. I think it's been noted that. However, there is a concern that recent debates have featured a race element. And, you know, even at PMQs, when the exchanges are taking place, there's always a community that's been mentioned. So just being content with what the Home Secretary has pledged, i.e. 5 new local inquiries, I think would potentially prejudice a community. Also, by limiting the number of inquiries may lead to not being able to capture the full extent of the issue across different regions, further leading to an incomplete understanding of the problem. So with that in mind, would you think a national inquiry would be beneficial? Thank you.
Councillor Morrow, you're speaking on the amendment.
Yeah, I'm saddened now that this amendment has come forward, that we couldn't just agree on a national, inquiry that looked at right across the board from the good work that this council has done in the past with its engage teams, and to show that there is a good way to go forward. That is something that could have been looked at in inquiry, that there are good ways as well as poor ways for council to go forward. But let's not just forget, they're not just grooming gangs. Let's not sanitise this. They are rape gangs. And anyone with young children, young girls, how would you feel if that was your child? Tomorrow morning when you're having a wash, look yourself in the mirror and say, are we doing right here? Are we actually right in what we've voted on tonight? A full inquiry, looking at everything, with all the powers that a full national inquiry would have to actually call proper witness, you know, to look at not just what's gone on, but what is going on. Historic and present. As the MP for Blackburn said in Parliament last week when he called for a public inquiry, to determine the failures, historic and present, on the parts of institutions involved which led to the heinous crimes of vulnerable children to go on for so long. This has been going on for years and years. It should have been stopped a long time ago. It should have been looked at properly 20, 30 years ago. You know, when it was first being reported that there are rape gangs out there of all ethnicities, of all types, of all people. It's not aimed at one section of the community or another. You know, it is right across, and that is what needs to be looked at, and how we as a nation tackle this problem. The Labour MP for Rotherham suggested, you know, he calculated in 2015 that there are hundreds of thousands of young girls, and yes, they're estimated it could be up to 1 million. Nobody knows to what extent this has gone. Only a full public inquiry will find that out, and we will learn from the mistakes, from the failures of the past, because we have to move forward with this. We have to get it right. And at the moment, little local inquiries here and there are not doing it. They are not addressing such major issues. And, you know, when you look at the Rotherham report, and from that, you know, Councillor Riley, speaking about the Rotherham report, makes it clear, it makes it clear it is councillors who are primarily responsible for overseeing child protection measures and ensuring they are adequate. That's within this borough. That is a responsibility we all have. And we've also got to put that responsibility and make sure the police are doing their job, that the CPS are doing their job. Everybody, all the way through, does their jobs. And where there has been failings, and where people have failed, they should be brought to account. This crime has gone on for too long. And there's people now coming out of the woodwork and saying, yes, we knew about it, I was shut up, I was silenced. That is not a good position to be in for them. We owe it to the victims, the potentially hundreds of thousands of young girls who have been victims. And I urge you to think about this seriously for a national inquiry, because we cannot go on and on and on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and keep this brief. I echo some of what Councillor Desai said. I think this has the potential to look at one community, and actually, as Councillor Gunner said, sexual abuse of children and young people isn't happening just in gangs, it's happening in the homes, in institutions. And from what Councillor Marrow has just said about members voting tonight with a conscience, what I would say is, do vote with your conscience and take it from a victim, myself, as a victim of sexual abuse as a child. A national inquiry, another inquiry, is not what the victim wants. It's action. So, yeah, vote with your consciences.
Councillor Matt Jackson.
However, that wasn't the case, so I'm going to just go back a little bit before Julie sort of mentioned that she did. Usually when I'm forced to listen to the comments made by those in the small far corner of the chamber, I usually end up shaking my head and thanking the Lord that the good people of Blackburn and Darwen know exactly what they're about and are letting us know what they think of them in each passing local election.
Councillor Jackson, could I just stop you a moment? You need to be speaking to the amendment.
Right, but to be honest, I should have had a chance to talk about this when they put their amendment through before the amendment went in. Is that right?
The Mayor, after the amendment was the motion was seconded, did ask for any speakers. The first one to indicate was Councillor Julie Gunn, so we are now debating the amendment.
Any other comments? Councillor Whittingham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did second this amended motion and would like to outline my reasoning. Number one, there's already been an inquiry into the subject of child abuse, and that included grooming gangs. This inquiry resulted in 20 recommendations to improve the safety of children. Sadly, these have been ignored for 2 years and are only now being acted upon. Thankfully, this new government are working at pace to put these recommendations into law, therefore offering the protection to victims and potential victims, whilst making those responsible accountable. The biggest single reform Professor Jay recommended was that for people in regulated jobs working with children have a duty to report. Not doing so would be a criminal offence, as would covering up abuse. Whilst the Conservative government initially agreed to this, they downgraded the sanction in policy put forward to a ban on working with children. A criminal offence would only be committed by those actively preventing the authorities finding out about abuse. Thankfully, this slated policy was prevented by the intervention of a general election. The current Home Secretary has correctly reintroduced this recommendation with the criminal sanctions for both cover-ups and failure to report. The amendment recognises this important piece of legislation, which now includes accountability with the most severe sanctions. It is ironic that those now calling for an inquiry into alleged cover-ups did not even table the correct protections in the limited response they made to such a substantial report. I also support this amendment as it makes positive reference to the great work of this borough. The original motion made no direct mention to the borough. The work around grooming gangs in Blackburn with Darwen was collaborative and successful. The creation of Operation Engage and the Keep Them Safe campaign by the Telegraph, supported by the honesty of officers and politicians alike, was excellent work by all. The work of this borough should not only be applauded, but should be a reference to the fact that this issue was not covered up everywhere, which is the general assumption for those calling for a national inquiry. For this reason, I believe that inquiries into any failures should be localised to those areas where there are clear problems. The third reason for supporting this amendment is that I believe that action is needed now and is the most important outcome to any victim, past, present or future. This topic relates to the most heinous of crimes. These crimes take many forms, institutionalised, in the home, online and on the streets. Any child abuse or child rape needs the full support of the law behind it, regardless of the nature, method or perpetrator. The most important people in any future pathway must be the victims, and I believe actioning the recommendations of the Professor Jay inquiry is of paramount importance, and this should be supported by everyone. The fact that we know that anybody covering this up will face the full force of the law thanks to the Crime and Policing Bill should offer reassurance, and the current audit put in place into past cases will offer answers to past questions. I'm proud to second this motion, but I finish by reminding people that if you are concerned for a child, especially within this borough, please, it is our duty to contact Operation Engage, and I am going to advertise that on 01254 353 525. Thank you.
Councillor Halley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just for clarification. Are we going to vote on the amendment first and then go back to the original motion? Councillor Jackson has just been refused not to speak on that original one. So just for clarification, please.
Yes, to clarify, once an amendment has been moved, you debate the amendment, then you vote on the amendment. What happens next depends whether the amendment is carried or lost. If it is carried, the amendment becomes the substantive motion, and you vote on that. If the amendment is lost, you can then continue to debate the original motion. But at this point in time, we are debating the amendment, and Councillor Connor will have the right of reply on the amendment.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In starting off by thanking me, Councillor Gunn, you might also have said, and thanks for letting me ambush your motion. It's a perfect amendment to kicking a problem under the carpet, which has happened for many, many years, 40 years, and we still haven't got to the end of it. Only this last week, I think there was 8 people in Scotland, white people, convicted of similar offences, horrible offences, terrible offences. Keep trying through local inquiries does not work. It hasn't worked. In the motion it tells you all the places where we've had local inquiries before, and we're still finding these gangs. We're still finding individuals. There's no reason why a national inquiry couldn't investigate individuals. But a lot of the problem, as in Oldham, centred on the investigation, the actual investigation. Nobody's looking at that, how these crimes are being investigated, how these people are being brought to court, which people are being missed. You know, and for that you need a national inquiry. You need to know the scale of it. Little local inquiries aren't telling you what the scale of it is. They're just telling you what's happening in one place at one particular moment. But you need to know how to tackle it. And that's what we're not doing. We're not finding out how to tackle it, how it should be progressed, how it should be investigated, who should investigate it. Local police forces do not have either the resources or the expertise to investigate some of these crimes. I urge you still, despite your misgivings, maybe, and I know your party politics will probably play a part in whichever way you want to vote, but vote with your conscience. 61 Labour councillors in Wigan did that. They didn't bother. They weren't bothered with whether it was a blue motion, a red motion, a yellow motion that came forward. They just knew that it was the right thing to do and the right thing to ask for.
We now go to a recorded vote, a button vote on the amendment. So please vote.
Yeah. So as that amendment has been carried, the amendment now becomes the substantive motion for this evening, and members are now asked to vote on the substantive motion.
Please vote. The substantive motion has been carried.
Thank you. The next item of business is to consider a report on the Lancashire Combined County Authority, which will be moved by the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say the events have caught up with this report in that only today the Lancashire Combined County Authority has become a legal entity. Yes, it's gone through Parliament today. Sorry, right, fine, it's been signed. So it's made some progress today into becoming the law. So that gives added value to what we are being asked to do on here, Mr. Mayor, which is to take various actions that will occur when the Combined Authority starts meeting. So if I just take you through the recommendations, that's probably the easiest thing to do. So A is technical. So B is appointing me as the representative of the council, and Councillor Mahmood and Councillor Gunn as replacements for me, substitutes if I were not able to go. Then C is the three major committees that are being set up. I will be on the transport one, Councillor Mahmood will be on the economic advisory, and Councillor Gunn will be the representative on the young persons. We've got the 3 members of the council to appoint, and we've made some progress on that, Mr. Mayor. So the 3 members of this body who we will want to put onto the scrutiny committee are Councillor Worley, Councillor Taylor, yourself, and Councillor Sajid Ali. And the 3 members who will be putting on the audit committee are Councillor Whittingham, Councillor Raja, and Councillor Desai. So we might as well do those today because we will only have to come back and do them on another occasion. The E is appointing our Chief Executive as the Head of Paid Service for the Combined Authority. And what that is saying is that is about us. We've taken a decision as the 3 leaders initially that we will staff the Combined Authority because it's still in its infancy. We will staff that with existing chief executives, so the Denise and the person from Lancashire and the person from Blackpool will be taking roles. And F and G are a bit technical. So that's the nature of this report. It is effectively us preparing for the fact that we are very close to having a Combined Authority enacted. I move the report.
Do we have a seconder for that report? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members, please accept my apologies. I should have declared an interest in this report as it mentions me, but it is definitely a non-pecuniary interest.
Does anyone want to speak on that report? I'm taking that as a no. So we will move to the vote on it. It needs to be a button-recorded vote. Please vote. That report is carried.
The next item of business is to receive and consider a report which provides an update on the Council's constitution and will be moved by the Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. So there's just 2 or 3 parts to this report. Appendix A and Appendix B essentially incorporate changes that have been made, either legislative changes made at national or changes that have been made in the course of the year, just to effectively to bring the Constitution up to date. And what the others refer to are the fact that you'll remember, Mr. Mayor, that we've obviously now taken the decision to have enhanced DBS. So we need some sanctions in case those reports either are not completed or are or reveal issues. So what these are suggesting is that the obvious place where those issues will be starting to be discussed will be the Standards Committee, and we need the Standards Committee will need a framework in which to deal with issues around DBS, enhanced DBS. The other point is that we will at some we have mandatory training on particularly things like cyber, etc. That's obviously crucially important, and at some stage we will have to start publicising if there are members who either can't or won't take part in that sort of training. Hopefully that will not happen. And again, if that happens, then again, they will go to the Standards Committee for the Standards Committee to make an adjudication. So fairly simple issues in here, and I'll move the report.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Julie Gunn. Councillor Slater.
We welcome the DBS checks, and we think it's a great idea. We will be making representations to the Standards Committee because I do not want to get my group to vote against this item as a whole because it has the DBS checks in it. But there are updates to the Constitution, such as mandatory training. There's no such thing as mandatory training because we're not employed by anyone. There's statutory training, which you have to undertake if you're employed by someone. Mandatory training is something that's either legal or not. If it's legal, i.e. planning or licensing, that's mandatory. Everything else isn't. And I will, as group leader, discuss with my group before the standards meeting whether we, as a group, are happy with the amended constitution. I have full things of certain ones, but I still do not like the idea of mandatory because it's not enforceable. Nobody can. I can understand you can turn around and say to me when they come to standards, you can bring one of my group to me and say they're breaking the code of conduct, but that will be for our interpretation, and you can publish all you want. We're not really that bothered about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's the game of semantics, talking about mandatory training. What we do when we list mandatory training is demonstrate to the public that these are issues that we consider to be absolutely fundamental to all of the Nolan principles and to what the public would expect of us as councillors, as elected members. They would expect us to uphold those Nolan principles. The training that we're discussing here in terms of the issue we've just been discussing about contextual safeguarding, those kind of issues, we call them mandatory because we believe as a council it is our duty and responsibility to reassure the public that we are taking every opportunity to be as well informed as possible on all of the areas of our council business. There are other elements of training such as cyber and dojo training that we need to undertake to keep ourselves as individuals, but more importantly as a council, safe. Because if we fail in our responsibility to keep our council safe because we haven't done some training, and then the council suffers some kind of hack that costs millions and millions of pounds, that comes back to the residents of this borough. We have a responsibility. So identifying certain training as mandatory is a way of establishing and evidencing the import that we place on those elements of training. Thank you.
Councillor Hussain.
Thank you very much. I think Julie's covered quite a bit of it, but I think it's really, really important because as government moving on to more of digital records, and that's what we are doing at the present time, is working with other departments, make sure that everybody go digital. And then when we start going digital, then we need to make sure that we've gone through a training like any of other staff who are going through the training and making sure. But don't forget, we are going to be inspected. We've got to achieve over 95%. And it's very important if you are leading the borough as elected members that we need to show example to our staff who are working in the borough.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mandatory, statutory, desirable, optional, I don't know what you want to call it, but I think it's an opportunity for development from my personal perspective. I think it's we live in times where changes are very fluid, very constant as well, and it's an opportunity to sort of stay abreast of changes as well. So from our side, I think we don't have an issue with this. Thank you.
If no one else wishes to speak, we need to go to a vote. Sorry. Councillor Riley, do you wish to come back?
Only, I think, really just simply to... I mean, I put the thought into people's heads, really, that if you were in a situation where you were at work and cyber training was introduced and you decided that you didn't want to do it, I think you'd find yourself in probably having to head for the door. The same story really applies to us here, irrespective of whether we are employees or we are not. As Councillor Gunn and Councillor Hussain have just said, I mean, we just have a duty. There is enormous penalties involved in failing to be up to date and failing to be safe in the world of cyber. We just have a duty to the residents of this borough to manage their council, because that's what we are, to manage their council and their money to the best of our ability.
Without further ado, we will go to a vote, and it is a button vote and recorded. Thank you. That report is carried.
The next item of business is to consider a report on the Council Tax Support Scheme for 2025-26, which will be moved by Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a pretty standard report. It comes every year just before Finance Council, and it's a report that outlines the Council Tax Support Scheme for the year ahead. For the ease of members, there is no change to this next year's scheme. It's the same as this year's scheme. The only change is the benefit uprating is reflected. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you. I take it no one wishes to speak, so I'll go back to Councillor McGurk. Councillor McGurk doesn't wish to add to a report, so can we go to a vote, please? It is a button vote again and recorded. I have to wait till the clock goes down. Report carried.
The next item is to consider the Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Licensing Policy for 2025-28, and that will be moved by Councillor Jim Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that report and take any comments. It's a standard report of cross-party. Everybody's been involved. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, it's been seconded. Jim Casey. If no one else wishes to speak on that, we'll go to a vote. It is a button vote again and recorded. Report carried.
The next item is a report on the Licensing Act 2003, Statement of Licensing Policy for 2025, again moved by Councillor Jim Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that report.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Does anyone wish to speak on that report? If not, we'll go straight to a vote. It is a button report again, vote again, and recorded. That report is carried.
The next item is for Council to receive the final version of the Year Planner for 2025-26.
Councillor Talbot.
I pressed forward then, actually. I meant to press push to talk. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's just a very mundane technical point in terms of the start time of the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is recorded as 5:30. By consent of or request of the members of the Health and Wellbeing Board, we did move this to 6 p.m. and it is advertised as that now, so I don't know if I've got to formally request that here or for it to be amended, or if I could just ask that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Riley? No? Can we go to a vote on that year planner, and is a show of hands?
So the next item of business is to receive any updates from other committees, and whilst there are no formal reports on the agenda, I think there is an update from Councillor Humphreys in respect of scrutiny, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Humphreys.
I go, get me best side. That's why you have to push the button. Mr. Mayor, first of all, can I apologise both to yourself and to members of the council because of the work which the scrutiny committee has undertaken in the past few months, and the reports coming back, the information which has come back to us needs more time to correlate those reports, and they'll probably come as a double report at the next council forum meeting. Quickly, just to highlight some of the things which is done. The Health and Adult Social Care Committee, they met on the 7th of October. They received a comprehensive presentation from Mark Warren, which provided an update on the work to ensure compliance with the Care Quality Commission and inspection framework. So that in itself is a fair piece of work. The Children over and Young People's Over School Committee at the meeting on the 4th of November 2024, the committee received an update from the youth MPs and a report and presentation on strengthening children's services commission arrangements, which include the development of a commission society. And we could understand the amount of work which is going into that. The committee also considered data from the regional SEND data collection and the North West Association for Directors of Children's Services Regional Improvement Group data. Again, that's a fair amount of work, piece of work which goes into that. Placed an Overscrew Committee at the meeting on the 2nd of December. The committee received a presentation on the bus service improvement plan. We're advised of the introduction of bus priority on traffic light signals at various locations in the borough, and it informed the BSIP capital funding for infrastructure improvements and resources funding to the improvements to the bus services. And we all understand that because of the changes to the traffic light system, which is now going ahead to give buses priority. And the Policy and Corporate Resources Committee had a meeting on the 30th of January. The committee received a report and presentation on recruitment and retention. A recruitment team had been established in 2021 following COVID to focus on this topic, and this was followed by the workforce strategy, which was approved in 2023. Several positive interventions have been put in place, which will result in a marked improvement with recruitment and retention within the council. And this is to look at the long-term effect of COVID on staff, the length of time they had off work, how we can encourage them or support them coming back into work, and same as all with staff recruitment, how to keep staff and recruit more staff to make sure this council runs effectively. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that report.
Is that report seconded? Seconded. Councillor Cornett. Do any of the chairs of the other committees wish to make any comments?
Yeah, just a quick comment, really. We looked at two things in the last report, which was the 3 new bus services which came into operation on December the 16th. And we also looked at the improved traffic management system that you've just referred to, Mr. Mayor, as the traffic light system. They were things that were about to happen, and they are of interest, I believe, to everybody. So what we've asked for is the first scrutiny meeting in the new council year for highways to bring back some evidence about how effective those changes have been.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? I take it that's no, so we'll go to a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
The next item of business is to receive reports from the leader and the executive members with portfolio, and the first report is the leader's report.
Before I move the report, if I could just make one small addition. I know this irritates you, Mr. Mayor, but I'm going to irritate you, but it's okay. So last night I was fortunate enough to present the One Voice Leaders Award to the Billy Project, which is a project run in Mill Hill by some dynamic women on behalf of I guess less dynamic women, vulnerable women. It's a terrific scheme. It concentrates really on health and physical activities for women who may well in other circumstances find themselves in significant difficulties. And it's a wonderful example really of the kind of primary care that we all keep talking about as being the kind of sort of answer to the NHS's problems. Really is the more that we can do in the world of primary care that helps people, and it doesn't have to be done in a clinical environment. In fact, it's probably much better not in a clinical environment. The more of that, then the less people will go and join the interminable queues at at the hospital and such like. So it's a wonderful project. It was a real honour for me to be able to select them and to give them their award. And with that, I'll move the report. Take any questions.
Do we have a seconder? Second. Thank you, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Devolution and local government reorganisation. Obviously, we've just passed more, we've fought hard for the Lancashire Combined Authority, and we welcome that. Despite the pathetic attempts from the MP from Rosendale to try and stop the county council elections, will the leader of the council now give the people of this borough an assurance that he won't try and stifle democracy, and 27, 26, 27 and 28 we will be having local elections? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on the cold weather, we know we've had a bad start to 2025 with the snow and then obviously the temperatures dipping down to -6, 7 and 8. I commend the gritting team, obviously gritting the main roads and the dual carriageways. However, I think everybody in the room has numerous calls regarding grit bins and grit not being provided to the side streets and side roads. People have been struggling immensely. And we are the first point of contact, all the councillors, and no doubt everybody has had calls. Can I ask the leader if something can be done regarding, we have 400 grit bins, we email the highways and we get a standard reply, which is not good enough, to be honest with you. So I'd like to humbly request the leader if something can be done, because we don't get snow every day. However, 2, 3, 4 times a year, if we do, we should be prepared for that. Thank you.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on the Northern Train services, has there been any subsequent updates? And have we been able to tease out exactly what the reasons for the cancellations are? Is there sort of one particular reason, or is there multiple? I assume weather will play a factor in there and other things, but is there anything that's been looked at and addressed to ensure that the services are resumed? Thank you.
Councillor Riley, do you wish to respond?
Yes, I do. To Councillor Slater, I think the simple answer is no. I won't give you that assurance because I don't think we've got any sense of where that's going to go. It could well. It's a possibility that the elections in 26 or 27. I would have thought 26 was your question. I mean, by the way that we are heading, by 27 we may well be in the world of voting for a completely different authority altogether. I think there is a strong possibility that your question may be valid in 26, and it will be silly of me now to say yes, we will have elections. I mean, I have to say I am puzzled by why my colleagues at Lancashire County Council are one of only 3 Conservative councils who have chosen to have their county elections this year out of 21. So it's an odd thing to me that it costs around about £2 million for the county council to hold those elections, and realistically they are having elections for a body that may well not exist much longer than a year or 2. So anyway, but no, I absolutely don't give you that assurance. The Councillor Ali and the grit bins, I mean, in very simple terms, we were ready. The bins were all full, and then they were all empty. And 475 take some filling. We put on, I know this because I bothered to check up. We put on some extra wagons. The amount in some of the wagons only enabled 4 bins to be filled up, so they then had to go back to Davyfield. It is a very, very serious and large logistical exercise to complete them, to complete filling them up. And of course, as you know as well as I do, that there is a terrible possibility that the moment you fill it up, somebody turns up and takes the whole bloody lot, and then people like you say to me, they're all empty again, aren't they? And we've had examples of of people who were seen shoveling the contents of a grit bin into the boot of their car so that immediately the bin is empty. I mean, I stand by what our staff did. Of course, the issue for us is that for a very small period of time in every year, grit bins are absolutely at the top of everybody's agenda, and then for the rest of the year, nobody cares at all. So it is a complicated thing. I mean, what we will, I think, and I can say this on behalf of Councillor Mahmood, who he and I have chatted about this, I think we need to review the grit squads. I think we didn't make I think we made a virtually non-job of it last year for various reasons, and I think there is certainly a way in which we can make a better job of that, and we'll certainly be having a review of that. No, and sorry, I'm sorry. I have gone deaf in one ear, so I'm really struggling to catch some of this. Trains. So cancellations on the trains. Yes. So it's terrible, and it's continuing to be terrible. I've arranged another meeting with the Chief Operating Officer of Northern Rail. Should have been this week. He's cancelled to hold it in about... Well, he's cancelled, yeah. He's cancelled to hold it in about 2 weeks' time. But no, I mean, the situation isn't... It's not getting any better at all. I am regularly shown examples of the departure board at Manchester Victoria with everything cancelled. No, I mean, it's dreadful. The concern that I have got is... because the same issue is obviously affecting places like Manchester, and I have put this to the Northern Rail boss. I wouldn't like to think that we are being discriminated against so that they can make a better job of serving Manchester. That's not right. So your point is absolutely right. The service currently is absolutely dreadful.
We'll go to a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour? Those against? Unanimous.
Thank you. The next report is from the Executive Member for Digital and Customer Services, Councillor Hussain.
I move the report. Moving the report, as you can see from the report, first 100 laptop which making rooms are refurbished and passed on to the community. So hopefully we should be getting feedback, and we will continue to do that. Donate all these laptops to either community sector or individuals. If anyone got any community who wants putting their name forward, please let us know. The next one is, obviously, as you can see from the queries, MPs queries are gone up by 50%. Last quarter is due to the reason the office is not up and running yet, so therefore all the queries are coming to our customer services. So that's why that's gone up. The last one is, as you can see, from September we moved to reform and we had examiner and all that in place. So what we've been doing, we've been monitoring it very, very closely. So there's been no major issues, and we will continue to monitor that. So if anybody's got any concerns or anything like that, please let us know, or even send the emails to us. And I'll move the report and take any questions.
Do we have a seconder for that report? Seconded. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that report, and it's good to see that the equipment, some of the equipment's been recycled and put to good use. I think we've got a duty to try and upskill the people of the borough with, digital literacy. I think it's still challenging, and on that, I just wondered if there was any sort of have you done any surveys or etc. to try and establish what the level of digital literacy we are at the moment, because we do rely heavily on some of the services utilising the internet, etc. And I think we do disadvantage some people because they're not fully conversant with technology. So I think it should be at the forefront to try and establish exactly where we are with that. So that's the question. Thank you.
Councillor Hussain.
Question on the laptops. When you are distributing these laptops,
in the past, my experience has been that you get a laptop, but you don't get the software with it. So is there, when you are giving these away to people, is there any provision for the likes of Microsoft Word or Excel to be included? So that's the first question. The second question I have is a general question on AI. I'm sure we're all aware of the advances in AI. The question I have is, has the Council considered its strategy in introducing implementation risks of AI? If it has, then I'd like to know about it. And if it hasn't, then it'd be nice to be able to establish a policy around this. Thank you.
Councillor Sane, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you very much, especially on digital exclusion. We have been working for the last 3 years now on this project. So we have actually spoken to the residents, we have spoken to the business people. So there has been a lot of work gone in the background, what we require, where the problems are. So this project has been running for 3 years. Now we come to the conclusion, and you've seen the report going to the executive board, which is our next 2-year program, what we need to do, how we need to upskill our residents, and what we have to put in place to upskill our residents. We have taken a risk management on all these laptops, what we're going to dispute out. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that all the laptops which are coming back, which is going to be about 2,100, that they're completely wiped off, and obviously check before they go to making spaces. When you go to making spaces, they are upgraded and putting the software on before they actually pass on to the residents. We are also looking at some of the area, which is the Darwin area. There's another project going on, which is actually looking at the internet facilities and things like that. And I think that's going to fall into with other departments as well. So we have got a lot of departments working with us. That's including children hubs, ourselves, community centres. How can we provide the services in these hubs where people can walk into the people who are excluded using the technology? There's always going to be support available. So this project won't happen overnight, and I can promise you it won't. It will take time. And it will probably take over the next 2 years. We are hoping we can get upskilled many people as we can in the borough, in Blackburn and Darwin.
We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously.
The next report is from the Executive Member for Children, Young People and Education, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before moving my report, just to update Council Forum that last week we had the pleasure of attending the launch of the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Voice Forum. It was an absolutely booming night, full of young people, bursting with enthusiasm, their parents, their carers. This is really important. It's not just about having a great time, it's about making sure that all the services that we deliver in the council are exactly what the young people and their families and parents and carers tell us they need. So having their input is going to be really invaluable. So thank you to those young people. Thank you very much to the young person who volunteered to be chair, and I'm really looking forward to their feedback, and I'll move the report and take any questions. Thank you.
Seconded. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quick question. In supporting young people who have left school, and I think we're working with partners to try and get them back into employment, whether that's voluntary or paid, etc. I believe there's some challenges at the moment in terms of them landing places within such organisations that will sort of progress their careers, etc. So I think, is there anything being done to try and support these businesses that we've historically engaged with and that did provide the support? I think recently there's been a sort of a downward trend in getting, particularly the young people who have got difficulties with speech and other health difficulties. These are finding they're finding it really difficult to try and get onto that ladder, and it's something that I think we need to focus on. Thank you.
Councillor Gunn, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, I would. Thank you, Councillor Desai. You're absolutely right. We do have a strong focus on our educational, children who are, young people who are not in education, employment or training. We work with our new directions team very closely. We work with other partners, for example, Blackburn College around the SEND employability group, which I attend. That has got a bespoke programme for children and young people who have special educational needs and disabilities, to have them at various levels of support into internship or into employment. That has proved very successful. We've got two very big employers in the borough. I suppose I can name them. NHS, East Lancs Hospital Trust and Asda are two of our key partners there. We also work with Blackburn and Darwen Youth Zone on the Dare to Dream project, which is all about ensuring that our care leavers are equipped and supported in those early stages. And we also work as a council, and I'm really thrilled that we do this as a council with our HR staff, to ensure that young people have the opportunity to gain experience, to have experience of interviews, but as well as experience of placements and things like that. So there's a lot of work going into that. You're absolutely right. It's not a figure that we're content with. We want to improve always on that. What I will say also is that when we look at national figures, there are two categories. There are the knowns and the unknowns. And when we combine the knowns and the unknowns, Blackburn with Darwen comes out very strongly. When we look at just in employment, we are lower than national average. But when we look at the unknown, so we don't know whether those people are working or in employment or training, we are way below national average in that we have a very strong record. We know exactly where our young people are and what they're up to. And when we combine that, that looks like a reasonable figure, but it's still not good enough, and we always want to do more for our young people. Thank you.
Against? Unanimous.
The next report is from the Executive Member for Adult Social Care and Health, Councillor Floyd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the report as read with one tiny addition. CQC contacted us on Monday morning and announced that they're coming in for inspection on March the 31st for 5 days. So with that, I move the report and we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Second the report, Mr Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Capadia.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report does highlight reduction in D2 admissions, but does not provide specific data or metrics to quantify the extent of the reduction. So any additional details would strengthen the narrative. I've got a few more questions which I'll email. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Councillor Corner, were you indicating you wish to speak? Councillor Floyd, would you like to respond?
I'd actually like to respond to that because it's one of the metrics that our team has particularly been successful at. So if you look at the 2 winters ago, we did a lot of discharge to assess in response to keeping that, I think, being led by our secondary care partners and making sure that folk got out of hospital promptly. What we've realised this winter is actually, as the local authority, we need to be in partnership in that process and to make sure that we do what's right by our residents, and so we've put more effort through the Better Care Fund into Home First. That's working really well. Our partners at ELHT are in agreement in that because the long-term aim needs to be that our residents go to the right place at the right time for the rest of their care. And I'm going to qualify, it's around about, the marks at Last winter, we did 90 patients discharged to assess, and I think it was in December around 52. So we've halved that, but that's a real quality thing. We're doing the right thing by our residents. And of course, I'll quantify that. Mark will have all the actual stats right to hand. But for me, discharge to excess is one of our success stories. We're doing it in the right way. Thank you.
All those in favour of that report? Against?
The next report is from the Executive Member for Environment and Communities, Councillor Jim Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before we move in the report, I'd like to thank our staff in training standards for the sterling work they're doing with seizing illicit tobacco and vapes. Over the last couple of years, we've seized so much of it, it's unbelievable. They're doing an absolutely sterling job, and I'd like the Council to thank them. And with that, I'll move the report and take any questions.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you.
I hope this is relevant to this report. Councillor for Billinge and Beardwood, and I often go for a walk in the evening. And what I have noticed over the walk is the amount of weeds growing on pavements, against walls, on roads, etc. The question I want to ask is that, is there a program for spraying, or is there a philosophy as such to get rid of these weeds, or are we going to leave them as they are? Because I asked this question right at this particular time because this is the time to take action on these things in the next month or so. So my question to the member is, what are we doing about the state of our pavements and the state of our roads with the growth?
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment on the leisure services. We had a meeting with a couple of the officers the other day, and it's absolutely fantastic to hear that the trajectory for the attendances at the leisure centres is going in the right direction. So well done to all involved. Just a quick question. I just wanted to mention that we've got a new admin in Environments, Hayley. She's taken over Maggie, and just for the record, she's doing a sterling job. So just convey that message back to her. Thank you.
Councillor Connor.
Hi, Jim. Green Spaces, Jim. I welcome this 1,800 new trees that have been planted. Could you tell who pays for these new trees? Is it the developers that take down trees for the development, or is it the council? The other thing is, along Goosehouse Lane, a lot of trees have been taken down there, and I'm just wondering, would we insist on trees be put back there as part of that development that's going to be going on?
Councillor Smith, would you like to respond?
Start with me, Councillor Hussain.
Sorry, Jim, just before you respond, Councillor, would you like to speak?
He did. Yeah, we can take it now.
My concern is the existing one that is not being maintained, and we get a lot of complaints from the public. So we are getting constantly told that we've got a priority and we've got a big list on the tree maintenance. Like it's been going for like nearly 6 months, and nothing has been done. So we're still waiting. So my concern is that the executive member that he should prioritize the existing trees and maintain that trees as well. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Masters.
Yeah, my question that I'd like to put to the environment is, who actually does the audit in terms of those bushes and overgrown trees that overflow onto pathways and pavements where they become an obstruction? Do we actually have some sort of a structured approach to it? Because obviously they do interfere. I mean, some places actually are so low that it may lead to an injury, and I've had a number of reports on Preston New Road between Leamington Road and Adley Lake Terrace. They seem to be quite awful. In fact, the camera there's a speed camera that's covered covers the camera as well. My other part of the question is, and this might not be relevant, but nevertheless I'll ask the question. We get a lot of requests for unadopted alleyways to be cleaned. Now, I know that we're not responsible, and there's all about frontage and one thing and the other, but Bolton Council have taken a different approach where there is substantial amount of rubbish, they do actually go out and help. Now, in my area, there is a couple of places where people are really absolutely had it up to here, and they're asking for help. Is there any way that we can approach, or any way that we can help them in any way?
Councillor Slater.
Hi, Jim. Green Spaces. Black Snake playing fields. No. No, it's about the green space. No, it's about the green space. We've got a lot of residents using the playing fields up there at the moment, and we're having tremendous issues with overflowing bins, with cans, bottles and dog dirt. And I'm having to keep sending pictures to the Environment Department, and it keeps getting batted back to the football club and the council. The council have helped a lot lately, thankfully, and the football club have a couple of volunteers, but we need something sorting out between the council and the football club to sort out the mess, because residents are seeing rats. Also, the green space, there's been damage done to the cricket pitches. I'm wondering if you can send someone to have a look at them, please. Sorry.
Councillor Smith, would you like to respond, or you've had some practice?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with Councillor saying. Councillor saying we do weed. We have a weeding team that go out. Last year was a particularly bad year because you may or may not noticed it rains a bit round here. And it rained quite a lot last year. You can't weed when it's raining because it just washes it away and goes into the waterways and it poisons it. So we can only weed on dryish days. We had a bad year last year. We will be out weeding again, so we do weed the paths. Councillor Connor, trees. Sorry, I've lost track of it here, Kevin, to be honest. It's a combination, I think. I'm not quite sure who pays for more, but it's a combination of who pays for them. As for the one you asked about the new housing estate, that'll be a planning issue more than us. You'd have to ask Dave Smith to make it as a condition. Get your spokesman on planning to ask them to make it a condition for the trees on the new estate. Councillor Patel, if you email me, we'll get you an answer. Email through to Martin Eden and we'll get you an answer to that. Yeah? Trees on our land, Councillor Masters. They're our responsibility of bushes. It's our land what we look after. So we do it on our land. If there is an issue, we can ask residents, well, enforce them to cut it, but you've got to report it. Yet again, Martin Eden's your man. Send an email to him where your issues are. Back alleys, we do actually do unadopted back alleys. We have done it for quite some time. But we've got to focus on the back alleys that we have to do, which are ours, first. So unadopted back alleys do get cleaned. Just doesn't look it sometimes. Because people are very quick at throwing the rubbish back out. They can't wait to get back out there, as I found out in Mill Hill this week myself. Then Councillor Slater, if you send us an email, love, through to us, we'll get you some help. Yeah? And I think that's about it. Yeah? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? Against?
The next report is from the Executive Member for Finance and Governance, Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move that report.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
And the next report is from the Executive Member for Public Health, Prevention and Wellbeing, Councillor Talbot.
I'd like to move the report, Mr. Mayor, and take any questions.
Mr. Kapadia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The dental pathway, it relies on referrals from health professionals and social services professionals, but it does not address how the gaps will be filled for the families who don't engage with these services. Also, the report lacks clarity on the practices, how they are being incentivized to participate in the dental pathway. And I've got a few more which I'll email Damien. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to talk about I was going to talk about the dental pathway actually for young people, because it's a really innovative piece of work that's been established locally. And it took great determination, because we have had poor oral health of our 5-year-olds. We're expecting the results of the most recent survey soon, and I'm hoping to see another improvement like we saw previously. But the pathway referral can happen through children's centres, family hubs, through GPs, and it will allocate a local dentist to a child who has not yet got a dentist. We're really working hard to try and get people to enrol their very small children with dentists. People often wait until the first tooth erupt or even until they start school, but actually the recommendation is to enrol your child with a dentist from the age of birth, really. So the more we can get that message out, the better, to be honest, because it's a really important piece of work that's been undertaken. Thank you.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, Damien, regarding the damp and mould campaign, and in particular those properties that are rented out. I think we have a significant challenge in terms of there's a lot of dilapidated properties, throughout the borough, and I know he says that we've tried to sort of send reminders, etc. How has that been received, and do we have a sort of a robust mechanism to try and address the more severe? Because I think this contributes a lot to our health profile as well. Thank you for that.
And no other questions. Councillor Talbot, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in terms of Councillor Capadia's question, had there been questions on the dental care pathway, I was going to congratulate Councillor Gunn on all her leadership, because Councillor Gunn is the chair of the Oral Health Improvement Group and has put a lot of leadership into the work that we're doing on that. The improvements are to be noted, and we are making good progress. We're coming from a poor position in the first place, and I think Councillor Fletcher mentioned that previously, and we want to continue improving. Engagement's always a challenge, and we want to continue with that. The staff team in the department are doing great work as well, and the partners that we're working with are doing really good work. So I think if you want more detail, probably drop us an email as well afterwards. But it's a challenge, but we've got to keep going on that. And getting those early habits right is that's prevention for the future. So that's important. At the other point as well, I wanted to just mention, slightly off this subject, but we've had fantastic figures on breastfeeding in the borough recently, and we are really making huge progress, getting better than some of the regional averages and the national averages as well. So it just shows all these different areas that we're working really strongly on. In terms of Councillor Desai's question, we've been doing a lot of work in terms of pulling together a housing strategy across the borough over the last few months, and we're working towards that towards the spring of this year. And as part of that, we're looking at a housing audit in terms of house conditions across the borough. So I think what I would suggest is we'll arrange perhaps a briefing session where we look at all the work that's been pulled together. The issue of damp and mould, I mean, there's been some horrific cases across the country. We're all fully aware of those, and it's something that we've got to tackle. And frankly, as well, with climate change, and Jim's mentioned the weather, we are getting more wet weather, so we're probably going to get more damp issues on top of everything as well. So that is a big piece of work, but I think we'll arrange a briefing for that if that's helpful. With that, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? Against?
And the next report is from the Executive Member for Growth and Development, which I understand is to be moved by Councillor Shorrock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I move that report, just one correction on the last page of that report regarding Darwin Town Deal, where it says planning applications for both schemes will be submitted in the first half of next year. That means 2025, not next year, as in 2026. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that report, and I'll make note of questions for the exec member if there are any, or you can email Councillor Mahmood direct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Smith, thank you. Councillor Morrow.
Just a quick one, Jim. On the BSIP, the buses go around the sheltered accommodation. I understand it's a registered public bus service, but you have to pre-book the bus to get it. As I understand it, that's not how it's meant to work. That's, I think, illegal, isn't it? I don't know if you'll ask Councillor Mahmood about that to see if that's how it was meant to work, please, because that's how it's having to work at the moment.
Right.
Thank
sorry,
you.
Sorry, Councillor Merrow, if you just clarify again which registered bus service this was?
Under the BSIP, the ones which go around the sheltered accommodations. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I take it that was just a bit of a clarification. Yeah. Councillor Shorrock. Councillor Dave Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Smith mentioned me earlier on. The answer is, for every tree that's lost in new developments, at least a minimum of 3 should be replanted.
Any further questions? All those in favour of the report? Those against? 2 against. The report is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can advise you that no questions from members have been submitted under Procedure Rule 11. So that does conclude the formal business of the meeting. But could I please ask everyone to remember to take any cups, cans, bottles, wrappers, anything else that's they brought into the room, out of the room, and dispose of appropriately. Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Simply to offer our congratulations, Mr. Mayor, on another stellar performance, if I may say so.